Morning, church family of American Lutheran Church, and anybody else who might see this. It's a beautiful morning. It's here we are in June 10th or so, and it's funny. I don't even know what day it is. Not even paying attention to that. But it started out this morning at 59 degrees. Everything seems awkward, and yet what a beautiful morning to be refreshed and to prepare for the week ahead. Of course, the temperatures will rise again. But yet this morning is a little bit of refreshment sent to us, and we thank God for that gift. So this morning as I sit here outside of my office, and no, it's not because I'm locked out, I just chose this spot instead. I was thinking yesterday about Africa and children in Africa. In the midst of everything that we're going through, in the midst of everything the country and the world is going through, in these days and the challenges that come with it, the greatest of all things that we face are fears. And fears also then create things that we don't believe could be in and within us, but they are very clearly within us because as any given person, we have the propensity to do good, but ultimately as a Christian we understand that our nature is broken and sinful and unclean, and that these things can well up out of us when we do not seek to find God's presence and to let Him move us from where we naturally would fall to be somewhere else and doing something different. And so my thoughts were on the kids in Africa. You know, one of the things that I love about going to Africa is it almost, as one person put it to me years before I went my first time 10 years ago, it's almost like being a rock star. They just want to be with you, and it really is true. The people just want to be with you. It's an amazing gift of love and understanding. And yet, the part I love the best is when I get to see a flock of kids, and the kids always. And I remember from my very first time there, when I was much heavier, they ran over to me and looked at my arms, and it's hard to tell maybe, but I'm not exactly a smooth-skinned individual, and the kids would run over and they would grab my arm, and with this look of amazement and yet surprise and wonder that I would let them touch my arm, and that they could touch my arm, and that somehow I wouldn't bite them. And I was trying to figure out what's going on, and very quickly the kids started saying "Mbwakubwa, Mbwakubwa," which means big dog. As they rubbed my arms and they felt the fur on my arms and looked at the size of me, they called me the big dog. And it was interesting. It was the first time it happened. It was different. It was just all the things to consider there. I remember seeing all those faces and the smiling faces and the energy and excitement and almost the kids wanting to reach up and touch and get their hands away because they didn't know for sure what was going to happen. But they didn't have a fear because I didn't seem to put off a reason for them to have fear. The fears were just the unknown of me. And the truth is, many of them had not seen or been able to necessarily get that close to what is a Mzungu, which is a white person. And all that could have been taken in a variety of different ways, but I sorted and processed and loved it because I realized very quickly, the kids in Africa, their skin is very smooth, and they, just like any other kid, are very adventurous and desiring to know and to learn, and that's the beauty of kids, that they don't have fears, and we try to give them fears, and we try to acknowledge fears in them and create fears in them somehow. Stranger danger, got to watch out, you can't trust anybody, and those things are valid as well. But just again the other day, I visited somebody's house who I didn't know. It was a black family, and I dropped off something and he got something from them. And the kids wanted to run up and just reach out and touch me, and of course the grandma kept them away, and it wasn't because of my skin color, it was because of the fact that probably COVID, and she knew I was wearing a mask, and so she didn't want to have any worries that they would infect me or not. But you see, all these things have created this fear, and all these things have mounted up at one time in life here. All these things have created fear about not touching and not connecting and not being able to do the thing that we most need to do, and yet the thing that we need is human touch in every way. Human touch is what also gets us over fears. Human touch is what brings healing. Human touch is what brings restoration in the midst of things. And I talked to one of our families who is having just more than their share of struggles on top of everything else right now. And I was talking to the grandma and said, you know, it was so amazing when my grandson was out there. He ran across the field to me and he jumped in my arms and he hugged me and he wouldn't let go. And frankly, I didn't want to let go at all because I needed that hug and I needed him. What a great set of things to be wrangling with. And I wish I had more than 10 minutes to talk to you, because the truth is we could muddle through this all day and talk about the power of this. But going back to fear for a moment first, I think that we have to realize that fear comes because of something that's unknown. Fear comes because of unknown things. And just like when a kid tells me, I don't like broccoli, or it's almost a sense of saying I'm afraid of broccoli. I said, have you eaten it? Have you tried it? No. Well, then you can't say you don't like it, because what you are is really afraid of it. Once you've tasted it, if you find that you dislike it, that's a different thing. And we can say, okay, I agree with you. You can dislike broccoli. But when it comes to people and when it comes to humanity, you see, the fact is we can't just automatically make assumptions about everybody and anybody. We have to understand that there is fears that create all this stuff in all of us, and we all find ourselves caught up in it so quickly and emotionally and responsively. You can't say you don't like somebody and judge somebody just because of whatever until you've touched them, until you've touched their life, until you've understood their life or sought to understand. And it's hard, because for all of us to put ourselves in other people's shoes means we have to get out of our own. We have to be able to risk to go and touch. The risk to go to Tanzania offered me the gift of kids who came up running to me and who now have called me and still call me to this day, Mbwakuba, and the memories that brings of the joy of them touching me. And it just, honestly, all those hands on my arms was kind of like being surrounded by the cloud of witnesses. But it was because there was no fear. It was because the fear didn't stop the initial pieces from happening. Now, if it had been something different, and there are times when things and people and opportunities and events teach us, we dislike that. And then we have to act accordingly and faithfully still. But above all, we have to realize the power of touch, and that's really what this is all about, the power of touching and reaching. Because not only did those kids teach me something, but this grandmother taught me again and reminded me something the other day when I listened to them talking. How much we need touch and how much this isolation has created challenges for us. And we're so willing to risk the touch and forget the fact that there are dangers, and we have to be careful with that. But I'm longing for the same touch. I'm longing for the same connections that everyone else is, and don't mistake that fact that it's not the case. And all of it comes from the deep-seated realization of God's presence in life with us as Jesus Christ. It's no mistake that Jesus walked everywhere. And people say, well, there weren't any cars. But the truth is, there were camels, there were horses, there were other kinds of vehicle and modes of transportation. Jesus walked everywhere. Because when he walked everywhere, he took it slower, and he could stop and connect to the people. And he could stop and see the world happening around him. And we swing and fly at such a rate that, of course, everything scares us, because we don't know from one minute to the next what's going to happen as our life just flies forward, seemingly out of control. Question number one to consider in a life of faith. Secondly, when Jesus walked everywhere and when he dealt with people over and over and over again, he demonstrates that it's touch that brings healing. He reached out and touched the leper. He touched the person who was ill. He touched the person who was unforgivable. He touched their lives physically and spiritually and emotionally by being willing to sit with them and eat with them and learn with them and share with them. He touched lives, because that is the gift that God has given us above all. To touch. Jesus wasn't afraid. Why? Well, yes, he's the Son of God, truly, absolutely, and positively. But he didn't fear because he didn't see anything except for people, the person inside. And when he looked at the people he saw, which was everybody. He saw and still sees today, broken, hurting, frail, failing, struggling, longing to be hopeful, longing for hope, people. And he still reaches out to touch today. He does it through your work and the work of the church, where we reach out and feed, where we reach out and serve, where we reach out and call, where we extend the hospitality of welcome and friendship, where we don't let fears or anything else hinder us, because the first and foremost thing is it's a person who God's put before us who needs his touch every time, anytime. And that challenges us to how do we respond. And I, like everybody else, has failed miserably at that as well. But where I go back and I seek to find reconciliation, because that's a healing touch also. You know, the thoughts of Jesus as touching people truly is important for us to ponder today. On this beautiful morning when the birds are running around enjoying the cooler weather, where the summer is beginning to grow full blossom, where things are moving forward and our world is in struggle and chaos and pandemic, we need to touch. But it's hard to touch unless you yourself have learned by being touched. That's why worship of any kind is so important. That's why being in the Word is so important. That's why prayer and giving and service are so important, because in each and every one of those pieces, we touch God and God touches us as we touch others. Many people have said to me, this has been a wonderful time being isolated. Many people, not everybody. It's a wonderful time being isolated because I have done more study and more reflection, and I'm learning more about God and my life in these days than I have, because I finally had nothing else to do, and I did the thing that I needed to do most. Sat down and let God touch me. Just as a reminder to all of you who see this, for people who say the church isn't worshiping, our congregation gathers at 9 o'clock every Sunday morning for worship. We gather together and yet apart, but we gather at 9 o'clock. That's one of the challenges of this kind of media as well, because you can choose to watch it some other time. And eventually then you can say, well, I've got a backlog, I got 2 or 3 I've got to watch. Or maybe you just disregard it at all. But the fact is, every Sunday morning at 9 a.m., our congregation gathers together to be touched by God. Worship is us reaching up to Him, to praise and acknowledge Him as the only God and Creator of all, and to receive His touch, His call, His challenge for the week, and the movement forward of our life deeper with Him. I pray that you'll be touched today and this week and often, and that you will not be afraid to reach out and touch as well. What you might find is Christ Himself. God bless you. Have a wonderful day until I'm seen by you again. Bye-bye.